Founding fathers, take a look around. Is trouble coming? Are we going down? Mother, daughter, and your brother too. Get your mind straight when it's up to you. Hey, you gotta see the storm a-coming.
Well, hello out there. This is Greg Seagroves, and we're here with Pat Dowdy, who's been a regular guest on the show, and Jimmy Catrone, and my grandson, Connor. Today's date is July the 27th, 2020. And what I wanted to, well, first of all, before I get into that, everybody have a good weekend? Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, busy politicking.
Yeah. Now you're running. Pat's running for District 2. Is that right?
Yeah,
or,
Zone 2, the school
Zone
board.
2. Okay. And of course, Jimmy there. Him and his son. They were over at Crab Fever the other night, and really rocking and rolling. You know.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
they got a heck of a sound there.
Thank you.
Now, what I want to talk about today, I've been kind of intrigued by all that's going on right now in America, and a tape or a interview I saw on YouTube not too long ago. Yuri Brezmanov, who was a KGB agent who defected to this country in 1970, and in 1984. He gave this interview, and even in 1984, he could see a lot of the things that are going on, been going on for a long time. And he laid out 4 steps to communist subversion in a country. And I've been very intrigued, been thinking a lot about it ever since I saw this interview, and been thinking of a lot of other ways that he didn't even mention that the country had been subverted. I remember back in the 80s, at the end of the 70s, Jimmy Carter lost election to Ronald Reagan, and he had really got the country in a bad shape, kind of the way Obama got the country before Trump took over. The military was in pitiful shape. Of course, there were some issues going on then that even Trump didn't have to deal with. You know, interest rates were sky high. Real estate markets were dead. Car industry was dead. Still, the major steel industries had died. Major heavy industries had died. They called the North the Rust Belt. This is where a lot of the Northerners moved south because they couldn't find jobs. It was really a very chaotic time. The country was in a funk because of the Vietnam War, what had happened in 1975, and how we had pulled out of that war, and 58,000 men apparently died in vain over there. A lot of problems associated with that, with drug use and all that. So the country was in pretty bad shape. And Reagan came along, and it was like a shot in the arm. The country changed overnight. We saw that with Trump, and the only difference is Trump was never allowed to take the country in a positive way the way Reagan did. I mean, if Trump had had help, even a little bit of help, instead of being under constant attack for the last 4 years and this coup d'etat that's been going on, no telling where the country could be right now. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But one of the things that struck me in the 80s, even when I felt good about Ronald Reagan and I felt like that he was leading the country in the right direction, a thing that bothered me even then, I was in my 30s then, but I could see that we were losing the culture war. I saw the family being destroyed. I saw drug use. I saw all kinds of corruption, on and on and on. And Hollywood, the movies they were putting out, the anti-American left and all that. And Ben Shapiro, I noticed in a interview he did the other night, he mentioned this. He said one thing the Republicans have been fair at is winning elections, but they have been terrible about the culture war. They've ignored it. And really, if you look at it, the culture war is what we're losing. This is really getting us to a point where we're about to lose this country because of losing the culture war. And one of the things he talked about was demoralization. That was the first step in communist subversion. He said this can happen in a 10 to 15 year period or one generation. That's one generation of school children in academia and in lower secondary schools and everything, what they're being taught. But he saw this in 1984, so personally, I think my generation, your generation, I'm talking about Catrone, Pat, you're a little bit younger than us, but I think you're about it in my children's age group, kind of.
Well, let's talk age. How old are you?
I'm 70.
70.
Yeah.
You got 15 years on me.
Well, I know, but what I mean is, I've
you.
got a son, 51. You're what, 55?
55, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just simply saying,
Right.
Your generation, my son's generation, was probably the last generation that really wasn't that indoctrinated. You know what I'm saying? Since that time,
Right.
they pretty much taken our children's brains.
Yes, they have.
And that's one reason I'm glad you're here tonight. And I know you're running for the school board, and I'm kind of interested, since we're talking about this process. We have 2 to 3 generations that have been indoctrinated to where we're at right now. What is your attitude? Well, first of all, I want to ask you, what kind of power do you have on the school board to do anything about education?
My opinion, not a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you got to get elected first.
Right. Pretty much the school system itself develops everything and then puts it in front of the board, and they vote it up or down, through or pass it. My understanding is that the school board, if they were united, if you could have a united school board, you can join other school boards who are united, and then lobby the state. As far as the curriculum goes. And one of the big pet peeves is the Common Core, which they've repackaged. They did away with the name Common Core, but they just repackaged it under Tennessee standards. It's the same thing, exactly the same thing. There's a few differences here and there, but they're testing these kids, over-testing these kids. A lot of the stuff, and I will tell you this too, they have committees that go through the curriculum books, and they have standards that they have to meet. So it doesn't matter if it's a paragraph or an entire chapter. As long as there's something in there that's on that standard list, they get a check mark. Yeah, and I had this conversation just the other day from my kids, knowing that they were going through religion in their class, and there was a small section, very small section about Christianity, a small section about Judaism, everybody else. And then
a huge one on Islam.
Huge one on Islam. Yep, and it's
but how do we change that? How do we?
Well, it starts at the school level, or the school board level, and it's making people aware of what's in there. These committees that are just checking boxes because a standard is met, somebody needs to actually go through and read what's in there.
But what I mean is, like, if the school board, let's say the school board united and they vote, can they change that policy?
They can. And see, the thing is, Rutherford County, there's the upcoming school year, the budget was just passed for $421 million, I believe it is. It's right around there. But that is 80% of the entire county's budget. Goes into the schools. Of that $420 million, now they get funding from the state and federal levels for pushing this agenda, the curriculum that's in the school system. If they would just not accept it, if they don't accept any money, they don't have to follow their curriculum. And it's minuscule compared to the overall budget of 420 something million. The amount that the federal and state governments give to the school systems are minuscule. So, in my opinion,
who makes that decision whether or not they accept the federal funds?
Oh, that comes from the school system. System. So the school system itself would have to say, we don't want your money, and school boards can.
How do we change that? I mean,
waking people up to what their kids are being taught, and having them contact that school district. Doesn't matter what district you live in whatever part of the state.
Can you, if you get elected, can you be that voice to wake people up in your district?
I definitely will.
Yeah.
That's another part of my reasoning behind running. And the funny thing is that some of the things that I post, now I'm not a crazy man.
Right.
I'm in law enforcement.
Right.
I'm a Christian, Christ follower. I have a pretty good head on my shoulders about morals and values and all that good stuff. I'm pretty awake as far as what's going on in the culture and society and around me. But again, I feel like I'm part of the silent majority, but that minority is so much louder than us. And that's where we run into the problems. And I cannot tell you some of the things that I've posted on social media where I immediately get attacked. Now, I go back and reread what I said, and I was like, well, yeah, I agree with that. Okay, I should have used this word instead of this word, but
it's still
part of my
the
beliefs.
message, yeah.
It's the message. Yeah. But we get shouted down. And the thing is if everyone would just become aware of what our children are being taught in schools and stand on solid ground and go after the school systems and demand change, it can happen. I'm just going to throw this out there because this has been a big topic of recent weeks. State by state, they're going to these mask mandates, right? They're being handed down by governors, by city mayors, and so forth.
Who don't really even have the authority to do it.
In my opinion, I'm right there with you.
I don't think it's legal.
No. And then what they're doing is they're pushing back the start dates of schools, right?
Yeah.
And then I watched a video, and the video you're talking about, I watched that. That's very, very interesting.
That's awesome.
And eye-opening. But I just watched a video that was made by a Williamson County resident who pretty much was researching who these groups are, or a group that's running around lobbying these governors and so forth and screaming at the top of their lungs about these mask mandates. And I wish I was prepared to talk about this tonight, but the video's out there, and he finds that organization. It's one organization, and of course it's liberal, but they're screaming, wanting mask mandates. So one state at a time, they keep issuing these mask mandates. One state at a time, they keep pushing back start dates of schools, and they're screaming to keep the schools closed, mask mandates, and they're all affiliated with other groups that are.
And I think a lot of this is political because
absolutely.
they're wanting to hurt Trump.
Absolutely. I think that's ultimately the bottom line. I mean, like, I can see it. I don't understand why so many others can't. One of these groups that are all tied together is the same group that's going around state to state screaming for defunding police. They're all tied in, and they're all tied in. They've got the Act Blue in that, BLM's in that. There's all these liberal groups that are all tied together, and together they've all pretty much been able to, along with the politicians,
well, see, this is one
destroy
thing.
our economy and everything else.
Going back to the issue of studying Christianity, Judaism, Islam, this is the thing that just drives me crazy. And of course, me and him have this argument all the time, and I respect his opinion. But I believe that Christians have got to get more involved in what's going on publicly.
Absolutely.
It's like the old saying, you're so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good, and they've got to get involved. They've got to get involved. Because it's like we were having this discussion the other day. It's like the founding fathers. I don't know if you ever know who David Barton is, but he wrote the book. He's a Christian historian, and he goes to the original sources. And he was showing the famous picture of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. And he said most people can only pick out two of them, because that's Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, because the left is always harping on them because they claim they're deists. Actually, Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson were more religious than they're given credit for, okay?
Right.
But of the vast majority of the people that were in that picture that signed the Declaration of Independence, when you read their writings, it almost sounds like an evangelical Christian today. Oh, it does sound like it. I mean, the very same thing that you would hear from somebody going to Liberty University or the Falwells or whatever. Right. I'm not a big Falwell supporter, but what I'm saying, if they had taken that attitude about just standing back and letting the British run roughshod over us, we wouldn't be a nation today.
You're right.
We wouldn't be having this discussion. Of course, yeah, we'd probably be something like Canada. We'd be a Commonwealth or something like that. But still, we've got to get involved. Christians have got to get involved.
Absolutely.
They've got to quit this waiting for Christ to come back,
I agree.
and get involved,
Yep.
I mean, technically speaking, if you know anything about the Bible, in the book of Daniel, if you believe the prophecy of Nebuchadnezzar, where he saw the image and everything, and there were several images in prophecy that show that we've been in the last days ever since back then.
Right.
Okay. So
no man knows the hour.
Yeah, no man knows the hour. So they could have made the same argument in 1776 that we're making today.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
See,
I can agree with you. All right. All right, well, define what you mean by get involved.
I'm just saying, being civically minded. You don't have to get out here and with your AR-15 and a militia, and that's not what I'm talking about.
See, that was kind of my problem with, the conversation we had at one point.
Now what we were talking about, we were basically talking about, like, if the authorities come in, which like we were kind of agreeing on this, that they're probably not going to have to come to your house. There'll be a guy with a clipboard. You either turn in your weapons or you won't eat,
Right.
type thing.
Right.
Which we kind of agree on that. But I was making the point that, like the patriots of old,
Right.
there was a thing. I read this, that a patriot said, a Christian patriot, he said, when a thief enters your home and binds you up, he has not only his power to rob you of your liberty, but he has in his power to rob your life. Yep. When the government becomes a thief, the only thing you have to depend on is God and your Kentucky long rifle,
Right.
And that's what I was saying, is
Right.
that if it got down to a place where it was between my basic inalienable right to defend myself, and they came in and tried, I wouldn't want to have to kill anybody. Nobody wants to do that.
Right. Nobody does.
But you've got to make a stand somewhere. You have to.
I agree.
Expand on that a little bit, Greg. So go back to sort of the day-to-day arguments.
Right.
To go in and do that. How would you do that?
What do you mean?
Well, how would you approach that? Because they're generally coming in kicking, screaming like mad people.
Well, first of all, you got to know that's what they're coming for. Well,
yeah. So do you
well, look at this. It's like these no-knock warrants that some people end up dead. That woman in Kentucky that ended up dead, they got the wrong house. They busted in. You can't blame them for trying to defend themselves.
Right.
Right.
Why would I not try to defend myself? I don't know who in the heck's coming through my door.
Same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a police officer.
Exactly.
No, but what I mean is go to that scenario of going to the state and where they lobby and they pool together from Democrats and liberals, and they go in and they're using a race card and they're using a religion card, and they're screaming and yelling. That's their mode. That's how they operate.
Yeah, it's organized.
So what do you do? What is the fix? Is what I'm getting at.
Well, we're going on
the day-to-day battle of doing that. What would you do?
We're going on a different tangent there, but you may disagree. I believe Trump should have sent the troops in a long time ago. I believe that he has a right. We're having an insurrection in this country right now. And like what's going on in Portland and Seattle is totally unforgivable. And the president of the United States is his job. He's the president of all the people. Those mayors and those governors are in the same boat, except on a local level that Donald Trump is. They are the chief law enforcement officers. And if they're not enforcing the law, they're not doing their job. Okay, so as the chief law enforcement officer of the land, Donald Trump has to enact the Insurrection Act of 1807 and take over where they're refusing to do their job.
Right,
I agree.
No, I'm not that fire. That's the one fire. I'm talking about the day-to-day, these battles with the school districts and what they're doing, how they're undermining, and how they're going in.
When I say get involved, I mean, people, especially if you got somebody that's talking a little bit of Christianity here and a little bit of Judaism here, but a whole lot of Islam, and they're taking your kid down, making them wear a hijab all day long, and taking them into the mosque and all that. That's where you got to stand up. You got, and it's not that you're anti. You have good reason to be anti-Islam if you really know the religion,
right?
Okay,
especially if you're Christian.
But just for the sake of fairness, I don't have a problem with them learning about Islam. I want my children to learn about Islam.
No, that's balanced.
Right. But no, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that, but what I believe you were getting at.
Yep.
You've got these groups that are just screaming at the top of their lungs, and they're getting their way.
They make the most noise. They get the most attention.
That's exactly
so
right.
That's what I'm
wheel,
saying.
We need to make the noise.
That's what I'm.
There you go.
That's kind of what I wanted you to say, but I wanted to see how you were going to say it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, we need to make the noise. We need to be the squeaky
wheel. Honestly,
wheel.
we're not used to doing that.
We're so used to that term silent minority.
It's like
majority.
Like we're the Republicans in Congress and in Senate sitting back and we're polite and we're nice and
But that's not a good thing.
We're not playing dirty and we're not doing this and doing that. So what do we do?
We not be silent anymore.
Okay,
that's it. You just not be silent.
I think it gets
Trump campaign. I throw some money in, and they badger me. They send me emails all day long, all night, all day.
Yeah.
It never ends. So they leave a comment box, and the comment I always put in the Trump box is play dirty.
Yeah.
Play dirty.
Well,
they're playing dirty.
You got to be careful. Right. We don't want to break the law. Play dirty.
No.
But there's
a lawful way to play dirty.
Yeah.
And waking the people up to get angry enough to stand up and say, you know what, no more. I'm done. This is it. And if it comes down to pulling your kids out of school, so you don't want them, learning some of the mess that's in the curriculum, then pull them out of school. But I think the voices need to be heard, and they're not being heard because everybody. I think we're a little more passive. We're not as aggressive as the other side, and that, in my opinion, that hurts us in the long run.
Yeah,
because we're not like them. We think we can handle things civilly, whereas
But we don't want to shout people down.
Right.
We want to use logic. We want to use, but
you got to keep a cool head.
But our target audience is not the people that are shouting us down. Our target is those people like I've talked to. I don't want to name any names, but I've talked to her recently, and I started talking about this stuff, and they didn't even know what was going on in Seattle and Portland.
Well, that's the audience part.
These are the people you got to wake up.
Absolutely.
There's different things I'm talking about here, though. That's the audience part that you want to get to.
Right.
I'm talking about walking into a legislator's office That's a different scenario.
Well, we can do that too.
Well,
But here's the deal, though. We walk in and you walk in politely. You're not going to get the same attention that other person comes in screaming and yelling and pulling the race card and pulling the whole thing.
You're right.
That's a hot fire, man. You got to put that fire out.
You're right.
They're under the gun.
But here's, and I'm going to give you a little example. The school board, just yesterday, over a 24-hour period, received 504 emails from this group that's screaming to keep the school closed.
There you go.
Do you think we have 5,000 parents that could wake up and email them
Absolutely.
and speak just as loud?
Absolutely.
So now you've got 5,000 versus this little group of 504.
And that's the thing. We outnumber them.
Right. And that,
You know.
that statistic you gave before is really interesting to me about the percentage of the state funds
Oh, yeah.
versus the other. I thought it was the other way around.
It's
Because I've sat
minute.
with, I was friends with the superintendent back home and stuff, and I hear him talk about, the state funds, and we got to do this, so they're going to pull the plug and blah, blah. So what are we talking about? Like 10% of something?
I don't even know that it's 10%.
I mean, that's a big deal.
It is a big
You
deal.
could shut them down, and what you're saying is you could drop those state funds and then drop that curriculum. Is
Yes,
that what you're telling me?
absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
a big deal.
And my understanding, I have not seen the numbers, and that's one of my interests. If I get elected and can get on the board, that I want to know exact figures. But what I've been told,
I don't think people know about that.
no, they don't. My understanding, it's about 5%. About 5%.
That's crazy.
That's nothing.
Just pull the plug.
Pull the plug.
Cut them free.
We don't need it.
And do your own. If that's what the majority of people
I've been
want in the district,
advocating getting rid of the state of federal funds for a long time because under the Constitution, education is a state duty. It's not a federal. It was not put in the Constitution.
Right.
And so the Constitution and the 10th Amendment says everything not done by the federal government is automatically reserved for the states.
Yep.
And you can grab that info under Freedom of Information.
Yes, you can.
Right?
Yeah, you can. You should be able to anyway.
It should be available.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: how many zones are there in this area?
For school board,
Right.
there's 7 zones. And basically how those are broken down is each school board zone has 3 county commission zones. So for school board zone 2, I believe I have county commission zones 1, 2, and 3, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it's 1, 2, and 3.
So you have a county commissioner over you?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
Now, the county commission is over the school board.
Oh.
So once the school board makes decisions, money decisions, it has, especially if it's a big deal, it has to go in front of the county commission. They have to approve it, which they're the ones that approve the budget overall.
How much impact, maybe we've talked about this in a way with this other deal, but how much impact where I see things that are bothering me, now I'm not directly involved in the educational system. I don't really know what they're teaching anymore. I used to go to the schools. I was invited in to go give Civil War presentations and stuff like that. Like at one time, I could bring a 1864 Springfield rifle and do demonstrations, fire a musket cap. A percussion cap inside the classroom, and kids loved it. But I doubt I could do that.
now you'd be on the FBI watch list.
Is that the one you used in the war?
He's got jokes.
Touche.
You'll pay for that later.
No, I can't say that. He's the one that puts this thing together.
Right.
So I got no, but what I was getting at is my granddaughter. She told me a couple of years ago that when she was going over here to Siegel, that they don't even teach American history. They start American history from the late 1800s through modern day. They don't even talk about the American Revolution and Civil War anymore. And how do we get that back?
You mean in high school?
In high school now.
Oh, well, they moved that, or they teach that, or at least when I was in 8th grade, they taught that in 8th grade. And then when we
I think it hadn't been that way but a few years.
Oh, okay.
So you've been out of what?
So by the time I got into high school, though, they didn't teach a thing about, late 1800s history.
Yeah.
Because by then we had learned it, we were supposed to learn it in 8th grade.
Well, when I was in, you didn't learn a lot of history. I mean, I think.
I felt like I did.
Huh?
I felt like I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was one of my favorite classes. History and social studies were two of my favorites.
The only thing I remember in elementary school was they called it social studies. Mm-hmm. You learn a lot of geography, and I think in 8th grade you got civics. 9th grade was civics. 8th grade, I think, was a little history or whatever. Then when you got into high school, 10th grade was world history, and 11th grade was American history,
Right.
But me being a student of history, I can tell you right now that my expertise is in the Civil War, and I didn't learn a whole lot about the Civil War in school. Most of what I know is what I've learned on my own.
Right.
And really history in general, I mean, for the most part. And I've had to throw out, the things I did learn,
right.
back then, but I think the difference between my generation, maybe even your generation, I could probably ask you this right now, and you would be able to tell me, who's Patrick Henry?
I know who he is. Was he a president?
No. Oh, God, you're embarrassing me now.
Sorry. I know the name. But that you're talking about was so long ago that I learned in school.
Well, Patrick Henry's one of those guys that every school child should know because...
Edit that out, by the way.
Did he?
I will, just because you're running. Just because you're running for the educated.
But
give me a refresher here, Greg.
But no, he's the one that said, "Give me liberty, give me death."
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I know that.
I remember learning this. All right, let's start over because if I actually do cut that out, it's gonna
let's
make
start
no
over.
sense.
I'm gonna ask you again. You probably your age, you know who this guy is, Patrick Henry.
Of course I do. Doesn't everyone? Don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What was that famous quote he said? Give me what?
Liberty or give me death.
Thank you.
Something about liberty and death.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But
Now I gotta keep it in.
Not to, not to get off subject here, but I used to think, give me liberty, give me death, man. I don't want to die.
Right.
But
now, did you think about what the liberty part meant, though?
But now, when I think about it, who wants to live without liberty? I mean,
I don't.
There's worse things than death.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But anyway, but the point, our generation, my generation, your generation probably knows, but like, you ask anybody beyond that.
My kids don't know. They've never even heard that quote.
Like the shot heard around the world. You heard that term, okay? Every school child of my generation knew what that meant,
right.
or Paul Revere's Ride or whatever.
Absolutely.
But kids don't know that stuff anymore.
No, there's a lot of history that's being left out. That when we talk about, like my wife and I talk about, and she's 12 years younger than me.
Right.
That she had this similar, learnings as we did.
Right.
And we talk about something, our kids look at us like we're dumb. And it's like, you guys aren't learning that? No, never heard of it. No, instead they're learning about, darn it, all the green stuff,
green. Yeah. And see, that's Marxism because it's a way to take over our entire economy,
Yeah, I can remember one of my kids came home from school. It was 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Did you know every time you turn a light switch on, a volcano explodes?" And I go, "What? What are you talking about?" And he had to kind of break it down, and I'm like, "Oh, that's the old ex VP.
Yeah,
that's his little deal."
Clinton and no, how do you work that out?
Huh?
How do you work that out? I'm trying to work this out in my brain.
About the volcano.
That has to be just child naivety and not like school, right?
That's what was told to him. I don't think he would have repeated that and just made it up off the top of his head.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you got to be careful believing what a teacher says. Because when I was a kid, I'm not joking. I had an English teacher that told the class one time that homosexuals are homosexuals because of a particular gland they have behind their ear.
Oh no.
Was that ever disproven scientifically?
I don't think so.
I'm just imagining all the children just like, let me see behind your ear. I also like the idea of a teacher sitting in front of the class saying, "You like light switches, kids?" Right. Every time,
right.
A volcano erupts.
Every time a bell rings, that's an angel getting his wings.
And the kids are just sitting there like, I can't see my classwork here. All right,
right. No, Dad, don't turn the light on.
The house will explode.
Okay, we better move along here.
Sorry.
That's okay. Second step in Bezmenov's thing about communist subversion was destabilization. He said that takes anywhere from 2 to 5 years. And this is basically when, and see, this is what I tell people. I was reading on Facebook tonight. I was having a little argument with a friend of mine that I graduated from high school. And she talked about how much she loved Obama and that she proudly voted for him and she would vote for him again. And she hates Trump, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of people don't realize, and I'm convinced, I would bet my next paycheck on it. Barack Obama was a communist, okay? He had a mentor when he was growing up, Frank Marshall Davis, that was a communist. He started his campaign in the living room of Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers, okay? Yep. Weathermen Underground people. He went to that church for 20 years of, and black liberation theology is a communist doctrine. It's Black Lives Matter is probably a spinoff of that doctrine, and that's what he preached for those 20 years that he was in there. Of course, he, lived, breathed, and died. Saul Alinsky, and so he gets in, and he was the one more than anybody who destabilized our government. He went in there and put his operatives in the CIA, the FBI, IRS, everything. He weaponized everything.
Yes, he did.
Okay, and so now this is really the bulk of the deep state that we're dealing with today. And so this is what I call a period of destabilization more than any other period. The years that Barack Obama was in.
Right.
Now, there's probably no reason to go any further with that because I think we all agree on that. The third thing was crisis, and it takes about 6 weeks to bring a country to a crisis. What are we in right now?
Crisis.
COVID, and combined with riots, and that's another thing. I am tired of the press trying to define, making me try to force definition down my throat.
Right. Peaceful protest.
Yeah. A protester is a person that gets out and carries a sign, and he doesn't do anything.
Right.
A rioter burns and breaks things and all that, and that's exactly what they are. And I refuse to use those terms, protesters.
Me neither. And the most recent thing about Portland, in their discussion with the federal police being there, the media used the term, it was a mostly peaceful protest.
Yeah, bull.
It's not been peaceful there in how long?
No, never. And they'll bring these people out. This is what gets me. They did this back during the Vietnam War, and the anti-war movement was a communist movement back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. People like John Kerry, who were veterans, that came out against the war.
Jane Fonda.
Huh?
Jane Fonda.
Jane Fonda. But they brought out these moms for peace and veterans, for peace or for justice and all this crap. And they use them as human shields. They'll come up, if you notice the tactics, they'll come up linking arms and all that and holding their hands up, and then right behind them's all the thugs.
Right.
But no, that's what we're in right now, and we're in the early phases of what is called normalization. This is when the candidates promise you everything they can't deliver.
Right.
Like the Green New Deal, Obamacare, free Medicare for all, paying off your student loans.
Right. Government handouts.
Yeah, government handouts. Anything that's going to break the United States. If you paid out just one thing, it would break the United States government. Medicare for all would break the United States government.
Don't forget affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
That's on Biden's list.
Yeah, yeah. That's always the infrastructure. They never forget the infrastructure.
First thing, if you want to kill a community.
How many times have they talked about infrastructure? We ain't got infrastructure yet.
Right. Right.
And so this is part of the normalization problem. And also I think these little code words they shoot out there, like this is the new normal,
Right.
You hear that all the time. They want to get, this is the thing. I did not want to hear Jimmy Carter sitting around in his little flannel sweater or whatever he had on and, next to the fire saying, America's got to get used to living, like this. Okay, and Reagan coming along. It's morning in America,
Right.
And it was compared to Jimmy Carter. It was morning in America, and of course Trump, was basically going back to that same strategy.
That's right.
Which it was. Things automatically got better after Trump was elected. The stock market took off.
Right.
This man, if you look at it, he accomplished a tremendous amount of stuff in a very short time.
Jobs.
Without any help.
Yeah. Jobs, bringing back jobs to our country. I mean,
Right.
the job market was exploding.
Right.
Everything was great.
Right.
Until March.
Right. And I think we ain't seen nothing yet. I think in September, October, there's no telling what you're going to see.
October surprise.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I've actually even heard people talking we could have another 9/11 type, situation.
Well, if you really want to bring Americans together, go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Being a police officer, I've kind of covered the 4 points. Oh, one thing I did forget here on the normalization. The last stage of that is violent overthrow. Once they get us to the point where capitalism has collapsed and it's overwhelming the system, it's Cloward pivot. I don't know if are familiar with that strategy, but
I was reading up on that just about a month or so ago.
It's where they overwhelm the system, and like in their situation back in the 60s, they wrote this thesis in 1966. They were trying to overwhelm the welfare system. That was what war on poverty was. And they wanted to overwhelm it to the point that it would collapse of its own weight, and then they could come in, the people would say, hey, we can't do this anymore. The government needs to take completely over, and they give you a guaranteed income, How many times have you heard that in the last, few years?
Oh, gosh, how many times have you heard it in the last few months?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. AOC,
Yes.
But what you're seeing with all these promises they can't fulfill, it's an attempt to collapse the whole system. And then the American people in their desperation will say, come in and fix it for us,
Right.
And then you got Big Brother. You got, we'll be, if we're lucky, we'll be China.
Right.
If we're unlucky, we'll be somebody like Venezuela or Cuba, where we're eating our dogs if we can find them. Anymore.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
for our listeners, can you in the title of this YouTube clip with it's a KGB, just clarify this, it's a KGB defector, that's in the title. Well, and it's 1984, 83.
I can't remember. It was 1984 when he gave the interview.
And spell his name.
Okay, it's
the clip is great, by the way. It's fantastic. It's about 5 minutes long.
Yuri, that's Yuri Bezmenov, Bezmenov. All you got to do is just push that into YouTube, and a bunch of clips come up. Mm-hmm. And this particular one will come up, with it. But,
right. Make sure you're watching the one. It's a one-on-one interview, him and another individual, and they're talking.
Yeah.
And
it's very short.
5 minutes long or something.
About
like
5 minutes long.
Great clip.
It's a weird coincidence. This clip's from 1984.
Yeah, I know. I thought about that many times too. That's why I call COVID 1984.
Yeah, right.
And I just want to, while we're talking about YouTube, I want to mention another clip before we finish. So it's the her name escapes me right now. She's the co-founder of BLM.
And Patrice Cullors.
Yep, that's her. So she's being interviewed, and she clearly states in the interview that
she's a trained Marxist.
They follow Marxism.
All
exactly.
This
and
guy,
you can't spell it out any clearer than that.
And she's proud of it.
People need to go check that clip out, because it is very clear what the agenda is.
She's proud of it, and one of the things that makes me mad about, really Black Lives Matter, in terms of size, it may be bigger now because they've had so much publicity, but it's equivalent of the Klan in a sense. Okay, the Klan is not that big in America. Okay, they're a bunch of knuckleheads that are out here, but this is 1920s America in a way, because instead of the Klan out here marching, in the 20s, after the resurrection of the Klan in 1915, the Klan enjoyed its biggest success. It was in every state of the Union at that time during the 1920s.
But the Klan never got their name painted in New York City across a major street in Midtown Manhattan.
Well, yeah,
BLM.
I know, but what I'm saying, there were some very influential people that were involved in the Klan. You talk about structurally, it was in the structure of the American government system during that time. Okay. Now we've come a long, long way, and even then the Klan was a minority. Okay,
and just clarify for the listeners again: Klan meaning Democratic.
Right. It was the Democrats were the Klan. Okay, and say I like what's his name, Louis Gohmert, resolution the other day. Did you hear about that?
No.
He passed or he presented a resolution in the Congress. He's a congressman from Texas to ban the Democratic Party because of their racist past.
I did read a little bit about that. Yeah.
There's no party in the world that has caused more problems to this country.
You're right.
Over race than the Democratic Party. So why do we even have it anymore?
Yeah. Let's do away with it.
Yeah, let's do away with it. But but see, this is not about race. It's about communism.
It is.
It's not about race. It's not about George Floyd. It's not about any of that stuff.
Nope.
But the point I was trying to make with the Klan is that how big it was at one time. And like if you go back to the old black and white footage where they were marching on Washington in 1927, they had a 40,000 Klansmen, men and women, marching down Pennsylvania Avenue, and they were American flags everywhere. Okay, so to a point, Black Lives Matter is the Klan of that time,
minus the flag.
Yeah. And they're being supported by. So here's another thing too is this cultural revolution. The target is 60% of Americans. It's the people that own big small businesses, entrepreneurs, and all that. The the big corporations like Walmart and Nike and all them, they're buying protection right now.
Yes, they are.
They think that this is going to succeed, and they want to be on the winning side. But it's like Winston Churchill said, that you feed the crocodile hoping you'll be the last one he eats.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. They think they're going to be the last one that gets eaten.
They'll tear that corporation apart.
But the main target of these people right now, there's 60% of Americans that call themselves the middle class. And guess who Karl Marx wanted to destroy? He wanted to destroy the proletariat, the middle class. That was the middle class. The only difference is they're doing it in a ways that Karl Marx couldn't even envision, you know. You know, I mean, he wanted to undermine the family. He wanted to undermine the church. He wanted to. The reason he wanted to undermine those things, which is what's happening now, without if you don't have a strong church, you don't have a strong family. Guess where you turn to for help? You turn to the state.
Yep.
That's why he wanted to get rid of them. So culturally, after the long march that Antonio Gramsci talked about in the 1920s. They've got the long march through our institutions, through Hollywood, through the arts, through the entertainment, through the schools, through the higher education, all that. This is the battle that we've lost. We've lost this battle.
Oh yeah, big time.
You know, I don't know how we turn it around. I really don't. I don't know if it's possible to turn it around. You know, I hate to be doom and gloom, but
I think you're right though.
You know, but anyway, I want to finish on this. We talked last week about, or the last time we had a podcast, about the fundamentals of we called it self-evident truth. We were talking about the Declaration of Independence and what it was founded on. And I like this one I was reading about. You can really just put this out here pretty simply. In 1688, there was the Glorious Revolution. That was where King James II, he was a Catholic, King of England, was overthrown by William of Orange and his wife Mary. William Orange and his wife Mary were Protestants. King James II was a Catholic. King James II, you might remember, is where we get the King James Bible from, you know. That's what they named that Bible after. Okay, but the key lesson here is not that a Catholic king was overthrown by a Protestant king, but it's the fact that it was the beginning of the weakening of the monarchy, because they transferred more power from the king over to the parliament, okay? And so the reason that John Locke wrote his Second Treatise of Government in 1690 was to justify the Glorious Revolution. The reason they called it Glorious Revolution because there was so little bloodshed, you know? And but anyway, he was justifying it, but he brought up three main points. And these points are the very same thing that Thomas Jefferson used to justify our own revolution. Okay?
I was going to say, it's almost like those are like the seeds of America.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can trace. That's why England and the United States are so linked together culturally and by common law and everything, because the seeds of that go all the way back to the Magna Carta, you know. Mm-hmm. And their Bill of Rights, the English Bill of Rights, you know. And that's one reason that the Americans wanted to go have an American Revolution, was because they believed in those English Bill of Rights. They thought they were English and they should be the recipients of those Bill of Rights, just like the English people were.
How close were those Bill of Rights to our Bill of Rights and the Constitution in terms of freedom?
I don't really know. I haven't done that much study into that. I mean, I'm sure they're similar, you know. I mean, but it's probably stuff like jury trials, you know, habeas corpus, you know, all those things.
What about the voting system and the the structure? Obviously, is Parliament.
Again, I'm talking out of my nose right now. I mean, if I go into that because I don't really know. You know, I don't want to. That's something for
That's
another
some
time.
research for you for this week.
You mean did I stump you?
Huh?
Did I stump you?
You did.
Oh man, this is a
Well,
big,
no, you didn't stump me. I just I don't know.
This is
something
a glorious
this is a big-
podcast.
Hold on,
No, I mean, when I don't know something, I'll tell you. I don't know. You know, I mean, I don't want to get into something I don't know. I mean, but anyway, in 1690, basically what Locke was saying is second treaty of the government that all men are created equal. What he meant by that was the king was a human. You're a human. I'm a human. So we're equal to the king under the law. Okay, that's what he was saying. Okay. The other thing he was talking about is that men have rights that are separate from government. These are inalienable rights. Okay. They're God-given rights. Can only be given by God, and it can only be taken away by God. Okay. And the third thing is that the government's main job is not really its only job, is to protect those rights. You know. So boom, boom, boom. It's that simple.
Yeah.
You know. And it's like I may have mentioned this before, but like the black man down in Savannah, Georgia, when Sherman told him, you know, this group of ex-slaves, he said when he was talking about special order, field orders number 15, and he asked Sherman asked all these guys, what do they want? And this one preacher stood up. He said, give us some land, give us our rights, and leave us alone. You know, and that's all we should want, right. You know, is to have the opportunity to make it on our own. And the government protect that opportunity. So when I see some black businessman or white businessman or Asian businessman getting his store burnt down,
yeah,
that's a violation of those rights.
Absolutely,
you know, and that's why I say Donald Trump needs to get his butt in gear and protect the people of this country.
By the way, there was a black store, businessman, store
Right.
owner. I think maybe Milwaukee, but I'm not. I think it was Wisconsin, and he was a Trump supporter. He was an activist. He was known in the community as being an activist, and they gunned him down the other day.
Yeah,
gunned him down.
And that's
came by and just took him right out when he was walking.
These mayors and governors in these blue states, they have a lot of blood on their hands.
Yes,
They're constantly talking about Trump having blood on their hands with this virus. Well, just like we were talking earlier, a guy came out in Newsweek the other day. And now this is Newsweek. This is mainstream media. Okay, they're finally starting to recognize this. But and the only reason they want that people are dying in this country unneedlessly is because of their hatred of Trump. Mm-hmm. Trump originally, from the get-go, has been telling people that hydrochloroquine, if given in the early stage of the disease, is successful in treating the disease. Okay, they've pretty much proven this time after time after time. But because of their hatred of Trump, people have died because doctors are, they're so adamant about, and whether they're doing this out of ignorance or what, but it's the fact that nobody has really pushed this because Trump came up with it first, okay? And so people are dying for that. So a lot of people have blood on their hands.
Yeah.
And I think personally Trump's done a heck of a job dealing with this.
I think so too.
This disease.
And by the way, just a separate topic, and I didn't understand how it worked, but now I think I have it correct. In the hospitals, when you go in,
right.
you get COVID. They're getting that they injected this thing of the reimbursement thing to the hospitals. That's why they're tagging them as COVID.
Yeah,
they're getting the reimbursement. So it's in their interest, the hospital's interest.
I don't believe
automatically. I'm hearing stories left and right. People with totally different illness. They're tagging them as COVID, so they get the money from the COVID money.
I do not believe.
All they have to do is put the word possible COVID, and they get the funding.
And the money comes in.
Yep.
Yeah. I do not believe these numbers out about how many people have died from COVID and how many people have got COVID and all this stuff.
And also, they're going after DeSantis down in Florida. That's why they're messing with the numbers down there. Also, he's on the radar.
It's so much politics.
Absolutely. On a personal side note on that, my brother has a friend who he and his wife went to get tested for COVID. They signed the little documents or whatever they had to do to sit there and wait, and they were waiting. And they were waiting so long, they got tired of waiting. They said, forget it. Let's go. They left without being tested, and a week later, both of them got a letter in the mail stating that they tested positive for COVID.
Oh, my God.
There is more and more of these stories coming out.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, it's a sham.
And you won't hear it. You won't hear all of it.
No, you won't.
No, Well, listen, I guess that brings us to the end, but we've been ending our programs with a prayer. Pat, would you like to pray us out of here, man?
Absolutely, I will. Thank you. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time that we get to share on air and hopefully spread a message and your word and in a good light, Father. And Lord, I ask that you watch over this president, you guide him and help him to make his decisions. Lord, I ask for blessings over this nation, that we can come through this and in the way that you intended for us to come through this, Father. Lord, I thank you again for everything that you do for us. In your name I pray. Amen.